Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing a very special review on one of the most controversial fragrances on the market right now. This is Silver Oud by the house of Amouage. Like all Amouage fragrances, it comes in a sleeve, and then the box comes out, and when you open the box, the perfume is sitting inside. This is what the bottle looks like. There's nothing on the back, and the cap is very nice and magnetic. I have Amouage Silver Oud on this tester strip right here, but before I get into how it smells, I want to tell you the story about how I found out about it and why I have a full bottle. A little over a year ago, I was in Neiman Marcus, and I wasn't too familiar with the house of Amouage at that point, so I was just testing a lot of their fragrances, mostly from the cap, but some I was spraying, like Interlude Man, some of their more famous ones. And I was really into oud at that time, but little did I know, I didn't actually know what oud was. I was more into Middle Eastern clones at that time. The Middle Eastern ouds are very synthetic and Western style, so they're sweeter and not nearly as pronounced, and they're nothing like what real oud smells like. What happened is when I saw the name Silver Oud, I got very excited because all of the Amouage fragrances that I had smelled were extremely high quality and very interesting, and at the time I thought I loved oud. I sprayed this, and the second I smelled it, I started gagging. I thought it was the worst fragrance I'd ever smelled in my entire life. I want to say what I smell now is not at all what I smelled a year ago, because if I smelled now what I smelled a year ago, I would not have a full bottle of this. 1 year ago, when I smelled this for the first time, it smelled like the most fecal and animalic fragrance ever created. In fact, it was so bad it made me laugh because I did not think people actually liked the fragrance. The main note I was smelling a year ago when I smelled this was a very sweet manure note. It was very fecal, it was very gag-inducing, it was smoky, and it was just disgusting to me, and I really did not understand how anyone could like it. I saw so many people saying this is one of their favorites, and on top of that, I saw a lot of reviews saying that it wasn't even a very challenging fragrance, and I could not believe it. Anyways, about 3 months ago, I was back in Neiman Marcus, and I saw Silver Oud again, and my nose has developed a lot over the last year, so I decided to try this again, and although it was still very challenging for me, I really enjoyed it. It was very smoky, very dark, very peppery though, and it still had that very animalic oud floral note that made this memorable to me. I sprayed it on a tester strip, and I could not stop smelling it, and I was smelling it for days and days and days, and I was like, you know what, I think I actually love it, and I really needed to buy a bottle. I do want to note that when I finally picked up this new bottle, it was not nearly as intense, it was not nearly as smoky or as dark or as animalic as I had remembered, and I was a little bit worried. So I looked it up, and apparently there had been a reformulation. My current formulation of Silver Oud is not nearly as smoky, dark, or animalic as the fragrances in Neiman Marcus that I had smelled, but it is incredible, and it's still very challenging to the average nose. Before I get into the smell of my current formulation of Silver Oud, I do want to touch on the older formulation and what really made me buy this fragrance and why I'm a little bit upset, but also a little bit happy that this got reformulated and that I have the reformulated version. So the original formulation, and I'm not talking about in the old bottles, like the weird old Amouage bottles, I'll put a picture up here somewhere, but the original formulation from this bottle was definitely more intense, smoky, and dark than this current formulation. And the castoreum and oud note in the older formulation of this was so pungent, it was so manure-like, it was incredibly smoky and peppery, and that was the thing that really intrigued me and also pushed me away. So when I decided to get this bottle, my thought process was that I would pretty much never wear it, and I would just spray it around my house every once in a while and just enjoy the smell. When I got this, it was lighter, it was way more birchy rather than oud forward, and the castoreum seemed to be toned down a little bit. And at first I was really disappointed because I was missing that pungent smell that really got me hooked and also pushed me away from the original Silver Oud. But after wearing this for a while, I'm really happy that I got this newer formulation because to me it is completely wearable and it still has the same depth and complexity as the original while just not being as animalic. So now I will talk about this bottle's formula and how it smells to me and how I would think the average person would interpret it. The opening of Silver Oud in this formulation is still very manure-like. There is a real oud note from the Assam region of India, and while it does still smell very animalic and a little bit fecal, it is so much more toned down than the original, and it's a lot more wearable, and I think that is actually a really good thing. The main difference I noticed between the batches is that with this newer formulation, the birch is toned up a lot more, and so is the amber note in the base. So what these two notes do is that it gives it this very distinct smokiness and a very nice sweetness to balance out the animalics in the opening. So really the only major difference between the formulation that I have and the formulations that I smelled in the Neiman Marcus is that this is more wearable and this is a little bit tamer. When I say toned down, don't get me wrong and think this thing won't last, because it still lasts 14 hours on my skin, very large projection, and is still extremely challenging to 98% of people. With this current formulation, my girlfriend, my family, my friends, they all think it smells very fecal, and although I'm kind of past that because my nose has developed and I've been sitting with this for a while, it's still very oud dominant and very challenging for the average person. Now, I do kind of wish I had the older formulation that I smelled in the Neiman Marcus just because it was so much more intense and smoky and animalic and challenging, but I'm also glad that I have this because I think that if I had that formulation, I would never wear it, and this is a very expensive fragrance. It retails for $550 because of the oud note. So with a fragrance like this, I'm not going to let it sit around and rot on my shelf. A couple hours into the fragrance's lifespan, the oud fecal note tones down a lot from like 80% to about 40%, and that birch really jumps up and makes it this dry, smoky, and very woody fragrance. The castoreum in the base is always playing a part in this fragrance, but it's never pushing too high, so it's not too unbearable. It is always present, so if you're sensitive to animalic notes, then definitely stay away from silver oud. And the main thing that saves this fragrance from being absolutely unwearable is the amber in the base, which sweetens it up and makes it a lot more tolerable. Now, I do want to note that it does take about 4 to 5 hours to even get to that point, so you do definitely have to stick with the scent for a long time before it starts to sweeten up. But once it gets to that dry down, it smells absolutely incredible, especially in the air. And another thing that I want to touch on is that the animalics are much more prevalent up close. So in the air, if someone happened to be wearing this and they walked by you, you wouldn't think they smelled like poop, you wouldn't think they smelled absolutely disgusting, you might not like it, but I think you would understand the artistry of the perfume. Silver Oud was made from the perfumer Cecile Zarokian. She's one of my favorite perfumers of all time. She's made Nishane Ani, which is one of my favorite vanillas of all time. She made Royal Tobacco, which I'm going to get sometime this year. And I think she's one of the most current impressive perfumers on earth right now. According to the back of the Amouage package, the notes include patchouli, cypriol, and Virginia cedar in the top, and all of these are very prevalent. Now, the hard notes include oud from the Assam region of India, which is definitely prevalent. I think that's one of the more prevalent notes in this perfume. Followed by Madagascar vanilla. This vanilla is extremely smooth and masculine, and it kind of hides behind a lot of the other notes. At first, it's a little bit harder to find it, and you kind of have to search for it. But as the perfume dries down, it's definitely there, and it does increase the likability of the other notes in the fragrance. The base notes are really where this perfume shines, although the entire thing is incredible. The base notes include birch, guaiac wood, castoreum, and that amber note, which they list as amber arome, which I have not heard of, but I'm assuming it's a synthetic amber, because amber is not an actual note, it's an accord. That birch and guaiac wood note combination gives it this very dry and smoky wood. If any of you have smelled Memoirs of a Trespasser by Imaginary Authors, this also has a very prominent guaiac wood note, and the oak barrel scent you're getting is from that guaiac wood. And then in the older batches of Creed Aventus, there was that very smoky birch. So if you can imagine that birch mixed with that smoky guaiac wood, that is what that does to this perfume, and it is very, very dark. The castoreum adds this oily and leathery feel. Castoreum, being an animalic note, is obviously a little bit challenging to some people, but that incorporation of the amber really smooths it out and makes it a little bit more tolerable. I do want to say that this fragrance is about a 3 out of 10 on mass appeal, especially if you live in the West where people are not familiar with oud. But don't let that scare you from sampling this. I think this is one of the best fragrances from Amouage, and one of the best fragrances ever. Anyways, I've had such a long history with this fragrance, and I'm so happy to have the bottle in my collection. I highly doubt I will ever get through all this juice. It's very full, about 98%, and you really don't need more than 3 sprays of this because it's very strong. But if I do happen to get through this bottle, believe me, I will be searching for those older batches. So my final score of Amouage Silver Oud is a 9.7 out of 10, although I do recognize that the mass appeal is very low. It's very hard to wear this in a lot of occasions, and not everyone is going to like this. However, if you're exploring the house of Amouage, or if you're just looking at oud fragrances in general, this is one of the best perfumed, most unique, and highest quality oud fragrances on the market that is not insanely expensive, because although it is very expensive, a lot of artisanal niche companies, such as Ensar Oud or Jinx Perfumery, will charge like $1,300 for a tiny little bottle, so this being $550 for an entire 100 ml bottle is not actually too bad. Thank you for watching my review of Amouage Silver Oud. I will say that even if you do not like oud, and if my review really scared you away, this is 100% worth checking out because it's such an experience. Everyone will smell this differently. Some people may think it smells amazing, some people may think it smells horrible, some people won't get the animalics at all, and some people think it smells like straight poop. Either way, this is one of my current favorite fragrances, and I will get King Blue by Amouage next. Thanks for watching.